but it does not get countered. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you are here. Today's nonsense looks like the greediest deck you've ever seen in your life, and I assure you, that is true. But hopefully it'll be a lot of fun as well. We are playing Arcane Bombardment. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery each turn, exile an instant or sorcery at random from your graveyard, then copy each exiled card, or each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You can cast any number of copies without paying their mana cost. So, the idea is, we exile a bunch of cards under Arcane Bombardment and just cast them over and over and over every single turn and kill our opponent. How can we possibly ever expect to get to Arcane Bombardment with like one 1-drop, no 2-drops, a couple of 3 drops, a couple of 4 drops, and a couple of 5 drops? Like this is not a way to win in Historic, right? Well, we actually have a little bit of a workaround here. This may appear to be all greed and just like the most giant of all spells that don't really do anything. But keep in mind, the curve actually looks more like this. Because we can cast Discovery Dispersal when it's under Arcane Bombardment for the 5-drop. But we don't have to cast it for the 5-drop initially, right? We can cast it as Discovery, Surveil to draw a card, which can, of course, surveil other instants and sorceries into our bin. And then get to, use it later with Arcane Bombardment on the Dispersal side, which is a much more powerful 5-mana instant, later on. Alternatively, you'll see there are no black sources in the deck, but, we are making a lot of treasures, so we can cast the Dispersal side if it comes to that, as well, as an instant to trigger Arcane Bombardment on their turn, because it does say cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, not just your turn, so we can do this on our opponent's turn as well. Similarly, Bedeck Bedazzle, we can cast it on the Bedeck side, give a creature +3/-3 until the end of turn, but then later on be able to Bedazzle away a bunch of lands and deal damage to opponents or planeswalkers. Both of these at instant speed as well. Alrund's Epiphany, of course, foretells onto as well. Though, admittedly, we're going to talk a little more about this one in just a moment. And then Magma Opus, of course, we can discard it to create treasures, which, of course, ramps us into our bigger spells, big scorers, burn down the houses, and Arcane Bombardments. But then we can also, and that gives us turn 2 play, but then we can also cast it from our bin with Arcane Bombardment as well. Similarly, we are heavily weighted for lands here, folks. We have 22 conventional lands, but then 23, 24 because of the Seagate restorations. 25, 26, 27, 28 lands, almost a 50-50 ratio of lands to spells in this deck. We desperately want to be hitting our Arcane Bombardments on time. As a result, we only have just the one Otawara and down to the Bugbear because we're very focused on casting spells and we want to make sure our lands are untapped as often as possible, right? Okay, so similarly, you will note, Alrund's Epiphany says, create 2 birds, take an extra turn, exile Alrund's Epiphany. Oh, bummer, So if we cast this from our hand, or we foretell it and cast it, it's exiled. We can't be flashing it back. But if we Discovery Dispersal it into our bin, or Big Score loot it into our bin, so it ends up in the graveyard, and it gets exiled with Arcane Bombardment, yes, okay, the copy will exile itself, just like every other copy instant sorcery ever does. But we still take all the turns. If Arcane Bombardment ever exiles this card for any reason, we win on the spot, essentially. We do have to be able to keep casting spells every turn. But how many extra turns do you need to string together to actually win the game, right? Hopefully not too many. So, very key piece, even though it doesn't quite work the way we want, we can't just, like, cast it and then use it to trigger the Arcane Bombardment and then also exile it with Arcane Bombardment later, things like that. No, you only get it one way or the other, but it is also really nice. There are some times when what we really need is just to buy some time, maybe make a couple more land drops, things like that. Or sometimes what we need is we just need another spell to trigger the Arcane Bombardment. Well, okay, it does all of those things as well as be just a gigantic target that can be foretold, give us early game plays and things as well. Again, also notably, Seagate Restoration, if it isn't used for a land, is a really, really sweet card to get exiled with Arcane Bombardment as well, right? Just Drawing a million cards every turn is awesome. And these are May. You don't have to cast the extra spells if you don't want to. So there's never a danger of decking ourselves either. So without further ado, though, let's get to the games. All right, folks, here we are up against Fernandez. Good luck, Fernandez. We are looking at this hand. It looks fine. I guess we can keep this. A little bit of Discovery Dispersal into Anger the Gods, into Burn Down the House. Seems fine. Fernandez, of course, looking at their hand, making their decisions as well. We go to Stormcarved Coast and pass turn right on back to Fernandez. They go with Watery Grave. We have a bit of an interesting decision here. Whether or not we want to cast Discovery this turn, we elect to do so. So we do send away the Alrund's Epiphany, try and decide if we want that land, and eventually decide, yeah, I think we do. Just making land drops up to Burn Down the House is pretty good. Our opponent taps out for Ledger Shredder in their Esper deck. We are quite happy to just Anger the Gods it away. That card is terrifying, particularly against our deck, where we're casting lots and lots of instants and sorceries. But this is suddenly looking a little bit like, oh crud, is this the whatchamacallit deck? Parhelion deck? And we're afraid it might be. Our opponent does Thoughtseize and then Faithfully Mend. Yeah, oh boy, it sure enough is. There is a Can't Stay Away in the bin. That's not ideal. So now we've got decisions. Oh boy, look at that. Well, Arcane Bombardment comes down. We could have sent down Burn Down the House right now just to get a clock going, because clearly they didn't have their combo right to start, so it's going to be a little bit late. So there is something to be said for that, but no, we're not fooling around. It's just Arcane Bombardment time. Come on down, Arcane Bombardment. All right, so the opponent did finally find Greasefang and was able to loot Parhelion away last turn. They crew it up. They do their thing. Ooh, nice. Inconvenient. But it is what it is. We drop down to 7, but we do have a response here. Oh boy, that was a great draw, folks. We wanted to be able to trigger. Oh. Well, never mind. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. So we're going to go ahead and make dudes and take all of the turns. Don't mind if I do. We do exile the Anger the Gods this time, so not ideal. But we do have a spell to cast the following turn. Again, folks, this is our extra turn spell, so it's allowing us to take extra turns. We do draw a big score. Finally, Fernandez figures it out and says GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Lopiak, and this hand looks fine. That's an Alrund's Epiphany hanging out over there. We cut through the little spot there. Lopiak was a little bit slow in their mulligan decisions and stuff, so we took our time, or they took their time doing it, and we decided to just cut all of that, you know, time out there, so to speak. We watch them as they History Bedalia. Okay, sure. Interesting decision here on our land drops, and we've also got to decide if we want to foretell the Alrund's Epiphany or just use a Magma Opus, because we're concerned we might need to do that, but we're not ready to give up on the possibility of looting away Alrund's Epiphany. It is a very expedient win condition. So our opponent has their History Bedalia going off. Has a 2/2 crashing in. We drop to 16. Hey, Bedeck Bedazzle. That's a useful one later on. But we elected to go this route so that we could burn down the house this turn, which we're not too upset about. Unfortunately, Setsuke also gets to return the History Bedalia, so we have to face another History Bedalia. Always scary when that happens. Well, okay, we make land drop. We have Bedeck Bedazzle. We have the Arcane Bombardment. So it's not looking bad, but we do need another land, lest this end up going poorly. So we Bedeck a 2/2. Take 1. Down to 15. Please land. No. Ay, that's the opposite of a land. That's an 8-mana spell. All right. History Bedalia comes down. Weaver of Harmony also joins the party. Ay. Okay, so I guess we Magma Opus. Down to 9. Kamiya Transience shows back up. Hey, a land! Arcane Bombardment. Yes! Okay. Feels good. And we do have Alrund's Epiphany to start the chain next turn. Should that... No! The unknown card in our opponent's hand was Otawara, the Soaring City. And no! Now we have to fire off an Alrund's Epiphany just to take the extra turn and pray. Yeah, all these things unfortunate. Discovery Dispersal is a great card, but not enough. Okay, take our extra turn. It's another Alrund's Epiphany. Well, I guess. Sure. And, you know, is what it is. We crash in for our 2 damage, just praying that we can make it work. Discovery Dispersal? Oh, no. Board Sweeper? No. Okay. Well, it was fun. Our last hope here is that our opponent will screw up. They do not. And we're going to go ahead and lose this particular video game. Turns out, folks, they did have a Banishing Light off the top here as well, so even if we had kept Arcane Bombardment, it wouldn't have mattered, so GG, opponent, GG. Alright, folks, here we are up against Thraknar. Good luck, Thraknar. They go with a Mountain turn 1. We go with Mountain Riverglide Pathway into Discovery. We have a pair of Burn Down the Houses, a big score, an Alrund's Epiphany, and a Mountain in hand. So the hand looking pretty okay. We do elect to keep the mana. I think it's very important we make our land drops here. We're trying to cast a lot of big spells. Even the modal spells, much better when we have the ability to cast the big side, right? Well, okay. So off the top comes a Bedeck Bedazzle. Which is great because on their turn they went with the Alchemist, which we immediately get rid of. Smoldering Egg shows up. That is terrifying if it gets out of hand. So we're going to go ahead and big score right now to discard the Alrund's Epiphany. Feels good, man. Because we don't want them to have a counterspell, right? Which they could have. Smoldering Egg gets a couple of counters when they cast Expressive Iteration. Card going to hand, card going to exile. It's an island in exile. And we have an Arcane Bombardment ready to go. We do shock it in so we can pay for Censor effect. We won't be able to pay for a Spell Pierce effect, but thank heavens it does not happen. Feels good, man. Opponent does have Consider to put another counter on the Smoldering Egg. All right, well, Arcane Bombardment is down. No spells under it, no instants to cast. Need to dodge having it bounced this turn. Okay, they go with Smoldering Egg. Royal Eruption right on our face, down to 13, and we just burn down the house. Get rid of these eggs. We get a Discovery Dispersal, but we don't need that. We bin a Steam Vents and Anger the Gods just to get to new cards. A land into our hand. And hanging on for dear life here. Discovery Dispersal under the Arcane Bombardment is very, very good, though. I will absolutely concede that. Opponent considers, expressively iterates, and exiles a Play with Fire. Play with Fire onto our noggin, does, down to 11, does a little scrying, goes bottom on the scry. We go Stormcarved Coast, and just start the chain with Arcane Bombardment because we're planning on Discovery Dispersaling on their turn. Yeah, we will big score away the Alrund's Epiphany. We would like to exile that, if at all possible. All right, Discovery Dispersal does see 2 more Arcane Bombardments. We're giving up the possibility that they could have a Disenchant effect. Okay, sure enough, Thermo Alchemist comes down. Well, we cast the Dispersal side using a treasure for the black mana, do the Arcane Bombardment thing on this turn as well, really hoping for like a Magma Opus, Alrund's Epiphany, something like that, and sure enough, there it is, Alrund's Epiphany. We don't really feel the need to do any more looting here, we've just got them. Discovery Dispersal sends away a couple of things, we have a million spells, including another extra turn spell in our hand, beyond the one that's exiled there. Dispersal just viciously abusing our opponent. Thraknar discards Otherworldly Gaze. Fading Hope's a token. Trying to get a little scry action. Does go top on the scry. So we're hoping they don't have any instant speed card draw style stuff, because we're going to try and win the game on the spot. Burn down the house. For Alrund's Epiphany, a little Discovery Dispersal action. We're not going to cast any of those spells. Yep. Send those away. Don't mind if I do. Draw another card. It's a mountain. Alrund's Epiphany. Going to make a couple of extra dudes. Burn down the house. Going to make a couple of extra dudes. And we're going to try and charge in the red zone. Our opponent, Otherworldly Gazes, the flashback side. Apparently, they don't realize we have 2 extra turns stacked up. Because we did all this after we had already stacked one up on their turn, you know. So Alrund's Epiphany shows up, and the opponent finally gets the idea that, oh, wait a minute, I'm just dead, aren't I? And they are. GG. Alright, folks, here we are up against Tiagapa. Good luck, Tiagapa. Or Tiagopia? Tiagop. I don't know. So, folks, we started on a mountain. They started on Snow-Covered Forest, or Snow-Covered Island, into Ascendant Spirit. We're waiting on that pump, trying to decide how we want to go about it. We're going to wait for them to pump and respond with Bedeck, Bedazzle. We do Bedeck their creature right into the bin. And they go with Faceless Haven. Okay. We go with Sulfur Falls, Discovery Dispersal. This is more trying to bait a counter than anything, but we've also drawn a lot of lands. We dare not continue drawing lands. We discover a couple of very large spells, a Magma Opus and an Alrund's Epiphany, into the bin. Opponent casts Spectral Sailor and a second Spectral Sailor, going to get in for a couple. Does. Yeah, sure enough. These things are fine. We drop to 17. Burn down the house. That's a good one. We have Anger the Gods, halfway expecting it to get countered. You can see I'm already holding up the Den of the Bugbear, saying like, all right, yeah, let's get it over with. This is fine. But it does not get countered. Bit of an expression of shock on my face at the time, but they have a Rattle Chains. Oh. Folks, this isn't Mono Blue Tempo. This is Mono Blue Spirits, which is very different indeed. Opponent casts 2 Rattle Chains on the end step and then gets in with the Faceless Haven as well. We just swept last turn, but darn it, they just hit us for a solid chunk of 8. So we burn down the house on our turn. They can still activate that Faceless Haven, unfortunately. Not real excited about that. Sure enough, they do. Charge in for 4 damage. We drop to 5. E-I-E-I-O. Play a Steam Vents tapped, because, darn it, we don't have any life to spare. Faceless Haven going to come crashing back in. They do. We animate the Den of the Bugbear and jump in front. Indeed. Alright. Oh. Okay. Alrund's Epiphany is definitely a good one, and we do have the big score just waiting to make treasures. Of course, we had to hold up the Spikefield Hazard here. A number of those spirits do have just single toughness, so it is reasonable action here. Oh no, we draw into more lands. That's not ideal. Okay. Tiagat plays Dream Shacklegeist. Of course, the Icon of Ancestry they cast last turn, giving it +1/+1. Making it, instead of a 3/1, a 4/2. That is a terrifying, terrifying creature indeed. Well, we're going to hard cast Magma Opus. Tap down some of their things, do a little damage to their face, do a little damage to the Dream Shacklegeist. Yupper. Opponent has a Rattle Chains to protect their Dream Shacklegeist, giving it hexproof until the end of turn. Inconvenient. Well, that's not the end of the world. We are going to be able to Anger the Gods this turn. We still have not seen an Arcane Bombardment, folks. We would really like one of those. But that's okay. The creatures go away, and they're tapped out, so we can just safely crash in for 4 mana. Briefly debate burning down the house to create a few more dudes, just to make the clock more robust. But ultimately elect not to do so, because we'd rather big score. We really need to find that Arcane Bombardment, I feel like. They have the Icon of Ancestry there ready to go, and most of their creatures do have flash. So we big score away a mountain to make several treasures, and boom! There is the Arcane Bombardment. Feels good, man. Don't mind if I do. There's even a Spikefield Hazard that shows up, so we have another instant speed option at some point. Arcane Bombardment, begin the exiling. What do we get? Oh, Magma Opus. Yes, please. In the heat of the moment, I was so excited, I didn't even think about the fact that we had just Anger the Gods, and I put 2 damage on the Dream Shacklegeist. If it comes down to it and we are 2 damage short, it's because I'm a fool. But, of course, at this point, in my head, I'm thinking, you know, we've just got them. You know, we get to do another Magma Opus on their turn and just swing in for lethal. Sure enough, they run out Spectral Adversary they found on their end step. Or when we Magma Opus there, I should say, not on the end step. And they do try to phase out our creatures, which is fine, but it's not going to do quite what they want. We're going to big score away a Burn Down the House and just Magma Opus. We try and tap things down. We get rid of their creature. Yeah, big score. Drawing some things. Spectral Adversary phases our creatures out, but then it becomes our turn, and they unphase out. GG. Alright, folks, here we are up against Apex Magic. This hand, a little bit awkward. We have a Stormcarved Coast hanging out there behind my shoulder. Couple of Spikefield Hazards, couple of big scores, and a Magma Opus, but, you know, these things are fine. Magma Opus will be, you know, a little bit of a ramp spell there. Light ramping, if you will. Karn, Scion of Urza, eh? Okay, it goes up. Interesting. We're presented with an interesting decision here. We decide their deck is got to be Chromatic Black, so we don't want to give them the Cabal Strongholds. That's really what their deck is all about. So we send it away with the silver counter and give them the Hydrate Krasis that they currently cannot cast. We do not draw into our Arcane Bombardment, but we do draw into Seagate Restoration, which we're almost ready to cast. And in fairness, we still have a million cards in hand. They show us a Swamp and a Murderous Rider. We don't really care about having creatures, so we give them the Murderous Rider, and we would prefer to keep them being stuck on lands. We do decide to discard the Steam Vents, expecting to be able to draw into more land here. So we do see 3 cards, 2 from the big score and then 1 from the turn. Sure enough, we do find a land for the turn. We cast Seagate Restoration, meaning we have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. And we do draw into 1 of our Arcane Bombardments. We are up to, I think, 10 cards in hand. 11 cards in hand. That is an awful lot, going to be 12 for the turn. They do go down with Karn, Scion of Urza, grabbing the Cabal Stronghold, and then pass through the turn. Clearly expecting to need to interact with our creatures or something. That will not be a requirement. So we go with Spikefield Hazard, targeting Karn. Just, we don't know what we're going to exile here, right? It's a big score. Okay, that's fine. We discard a land, draw some cards, make treasures. And of course, we wanted to go Spikefield Hazard specifically because it also is sure to let us trigger Arcane Bombardment on their turn as well, which is very nice. All right, so Cabal Stronghold adds 6 mana. Karn goes up. We give them a Moment of Craving. No land drop for you. And they Karn, Scion of Urza. Karn, Scion of Urza goes down. Gets that land that we just gave them and spews off the mana. Good lord. Okay, well, fine. Spikefield Hazard, your face. Arcane Bombardment. It's another big score. That's not quite the ones we were hoping, but it is fine. One of the problems with this deck is occasionally you will discard cards you don't want to get. We discard a Burn Down the House, draw into more Burn Down the House, and some land, ping their face. 6 mana remain, but of course, you only can trigger Arcane Bombardment just the first time each turn, right? So we go Burn Down the House, making dudes. Spikefield Hazard is what is exiled. Darn it. In retrospect, we were supposed to make the big scores here because that was the, you know, making the treasures was important. But I'm like, man, we don't need any more cards to win this game. You know, we've already got victory lined up in our head. We go after Karn just to make sure to limit the number of draws they have. and checking to see what's exiled here. When, folks, the worst happens. It's Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. But you know, wait. Hold on. A little quick math in my head. We don't even need to trigger it right now. Let's do this thing. Yeah, go ahead. Do what you got to do. We want that spell to resolve. Because now we're going to Magma Opus. Deal damage to them. Tap down their last black source and their Ulamog. And, oh boy, we even draw into the extra turn spells that we were hoping we would. We had burned down the houses and things to insulate us as well. But, so we didn't actually need the extra one. We were going to win. But sure enough, Apex Magic, GG. All right, folks, we are back. We are back. And honestly, we had a great time. This deck is just an absolute blast to pilot. Would I encourage you to build it to take to a tournament? No. No, this is not that kind of deck. Would I encourage you to build it if you were just like, I want to have a good time and get my wins in? Absolutely. This is not as memey as it might look on paper. You're doing very, very powerful things. We're playing it in Explorer today. But this easily could be adapted to be in Historic or something as well. You could even do Faithless Looting style things to get to it more quickly. You could do the 4-mana sorcery that flashes back, you know, cards from your graveyard. So you could get your Magma Opuses and Discovery Dispersals, things like that, into your bin, Alrund's Epiphanies and whatnot, and then flash them back out. We've already seen that be a powerful strategy in Historic in the past. Just as an alternate to having to get all the way up to Arcane Bombardment. You know, like there's a lot of really powerful things you can do for sure. So I would not at all discourage that. And honestly, the deck was fine, at least in the play queue and things. We did play it a little bit in ranked before, and honestly, it was even fine there. But it, you know, it is not designed for that. It's designed for a good time, and I want to make that perfectly clear to everybody. I would not expect a 90% win rate or anything with this deck. You know, you're gonna have some games where our interaction just doesn't line up very well against, let's say, 4 toughness angels, or when they grow the life gain creatures, the Ajani's Pridemate style creatures, to 4/4s, 5/5s. It's going to be difficult for us to kill them in time. Burn down the house is going to be too slow, right? So there are going to be times when you're on the draw and it's just like, man, I can never win this game. Like, we're just, our cards don't do what they need to do for this game. So outside of those non-games, though, the deck is actually really competitive, believe it or not. Again, we're always hitting our land drops because we have so many. 28 lands is an awful lot, plus a little bit of looting and stuff as well. A little bit of draw fixing with Discovery Dispersal, right? Discovery side. So we're getting up to Arcane Bombardment very consistently. We're interacting on the way there with the Spikefield Hazards and Bedeck Bedazzles and Anger the Gods and Burn Down the Houses. Like, we're interacting robustly. This is not just a meme. It's absolutely a meme. You know, we're looking to have a good time and all that. But I would not discourage you at all. That said, I'm always looking for improvements. So if you were looking at this deck saying, oh man, how could you have forgotten about this card? It's possible I just did. I just forgot about it, right? So let me know how you feel, or how you might have changed this deck to make it better, and what things we might do to improve it, things like that, down in the comments below. Appreciate it. If you're not a sub, please consider subscribing. We're really trying to get to 1,000 subs. You make no money from YouTube at all until then. I have absolutely no control over my advertisements or anything like that, and I make nothing from them until we make it to 1,000 subscribers. So just doing that would be just hugely beneficial. I would really appreciate it. It's also true that we do nonsense content on the regular. So if you're like, man, I really enjoy just having a good time playing Magic, maybe my channel's right for you. So drop a subscription. Really appreciate it. Either way, though, I will look forward to seeing you next time.